Shaun Keaveny, tell me all about your new podcast.
Ooh, Stu, stop it. Well, I will tell you. I'll give you a brief potted history, right? And it goes back a little bit. This so when I was still at the old radio station back just before the second lockdown, I remember it, like sort of December 2020. I was getting a little bit, as I'm sure many people were. We couldn't do anything, could we, in 2020? And it sort of brought it home to me just how thwarted creatively I've been in a lot of ways. Like apart from the radio show, which was brilliant, and that was my outlet for everything. I don't know what it was. It was like one dusky afternoon, just before the second lockdown. Everybody was feeling a bit long in the tooth and down in the mouth. I think it was in the top room, which is always depressing, Stu. Anyway, our top room, it's just full of. And I'd noticed that I had dozens and dozens of notebooks that I'd written in, and they were full of ideas, right? They were full. I'm not to say that they were all good ideas, but it's sort of, for some reason, that it all accumulated in my mind and sort of culminated and made me think, I have had so many ideas for books, for documentaries, for telly ideas, I've written down millions of jokes, and most of them will never see the light of day. And when you do, and I don't know if you ever get this, but like when you interview a lot of people, when you interview musicians and you interview novelists and stuff, you get a bit of an inferiority complex sometimes. I used to, because I'd be like, well, why can't I write a novel? And obviously I never fucking will. So and then I had this light bulb moment. Why don't I make a podcast where I just sit and mine all this stuff and bring some of it to life, and maybe add the odd sound effect here and there. And, if I've written a sketch, perform it for the listeners. So I started recording these they were only like 20-minute little chunks. And then I thought, well, why don't we do it with other creative people? Because they will have, I bet they've got the same, like millions of ideas they haven't got away. And that was the kernel of it. And then it got to like Easter last year, and my old mate Clive Tullow, one of the great TV producers who's produced all the Ruby Wax shows and Joanna Lumley shows and stuff, he was like, I can help you if you want, because I was moaning about I couldn't get it off the ground, And so that was the catalyst. His company got behind it. Ben, his son, is a genius when it comes to anything audio, and he's just helped me develop the whole situation. And now we find ourselves on the precipice of another Shaun Keaveny podcast. I apologize. I think that I'm perhaps putting too much out there.
Have you learned anything about yourself and your questioning of why maybe you've not fulfilled some of these ideas from exploring other people's sort of trunk of lost dreams?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the process itself of one going through one's detritus brings you up sharp and makes you, first of all, realize how easy here we go, how easy it is to have an idea, but how difficult it is to complete that idea. And I think that in the realms of psychology or psychiatry, there are such things as starters and finishers. And I've heard this a lot recently, perhaps because I'm tuned into it. But there are some people, apparently, I ain't one of them, who once they start something, they have to finish it. And so they're incredible. If they're creative as well, they go, I've had an idea for a sitcom. That's it. That's them for 18 months. They will not rest until they've finished it, because it's just the way their psyche works. Whereas I am the total opposite, Stu. So I'm like, I will have 9 ideas before I've had my shower in the morning. I might not write them all down. I might not capture them all. I might write 6 of them down, and I'll think at least half of them are good. And I'll think, right, okay. Well, and I'll give you an example. I was on my bike 2 weeks ago, going down to the canal for some fresh air. And I went past, near us, near Ladbroke Grove, there's this tiny little shop. and it's rarely open, and there's a little old man who works in there, and he's like a haberdasher. If you take your ripped clothes in, he'll sew them up and stuff. And I thought, I know this is a short film, and it's called something like The Dead Man's Suit or something. And I had this idea of a man taking his suit, really dapper guy, in to be taken in because he's got a very special occasion, and he gets chatting to the guy and stuff. And then basically, I'm ruining it, but basically he's getting it taken in because he's going to get cremated in it because he's going to Dignitas. And I thought, this is a fucking great. This is going to be amazing. I'm going to write it this afternoon. And I wrote about 10 pages in a cafe. But am I ever going to finish that? Probably not.
Do you think this really interests me, because I have these kind of conversations with so many of my pals that are, you know, working a creative field, I guess. And I'd put myself in the category of someone that when I start something, I have to finish it, right? But I also run a podcast with someone that has ideas but procrastinates beyond belief and never really gets it going. But I think that sometimes that there's a happy medium there. If you work with each other, sometimes that can be quite fruitful, because sometimes I think if I'm trying to finish something that I've set myself a task to do, if I've come up with this idea, like, oh, I'm going to do that, sometimes I kind of just rush it to get it done and get it over the line, and it might not actually be that great. Whereas had I procrastinated a bit more and maybe sort of sat on it for a while, I do think there's like a balance to be made there.
That's really true. That's why all the great collaborations, isn't it? Like if you're with comedy writers or with, you know, your Lennon and McCartney's, it's that yin and yang, isn't it? If you just yin, you're a bit fucked sometimes. You're a bit buggered sometimes. You know, you do need somebody else's input, I think, sometimes, don't you?
100%. Well, give us a snapshot into some of the people that we can expect to hear you chatting to.
We've done, I think I'm quite proud of it, really, because I mean, obviously over the years of doing my radio shows, I've built up some good friendships with creative types. So, and obviously, you know what this is like. You end up tapping up your mates who might have a bit of profile, who might be able to help you get it over the line. It's very mercenary in a lot of ways, and people, I think, often dread the text. Oh, here he is. Got another podcast, have you?
Another idea, Shaun.
Yeah, another idea. You need help getting over the line, do you? So it is a bit like that. But like, I was very chuffed and gratified because we've maybe recorded I've recorded endless my bits, you know, because I just love actually sitting up in the top room going through my stuff. It's quite cathartic. But we've probably got about eight done so far, and we've got people like, we've got Samira Ahmed, the journalist, who is just brilliant. She's actually, amongst many other things, you know, you hear her on Front Row a lot. She's one of the most learned, culturally steeped people, but she's also just like a Beatles mega fan, you know. And she talks through when she was posted out to LA in the 90s, and she was in the Viper Room and watched Oasis, one of Oasis' first shows in America, and she did like a review of it in pencil on the back of a beer mat or something, you know, and she sort of shows it to us. It's really cool. And then you get people like Nina Conti, the comedian and ventriloquist, who, that episode is really psychological. It's really deep, because she is talking about what it's like to be multifaceted, to be a character and to be a self, and that goes quite deep, quite quick. Tim Key, who's just one of the funniest. I mean, talk about a man with too many ideas.
Yeah,
that's Tim Key, you know. So that's fun. I was perhaps slightly more excited than anything that we got Vic Reeves, that we got Jim on the podcast, and that, what I loved about that was how we've used it on the promo, as you would do, you know. He says something about halfway through, he's like, I'm really glad that you've made me go through my ideas, because I've forgotten about some of the crap that I've done over the year, and some of his stuff is just unbelievably funny.
Yeah.
But also, it's not all about being funny, you know. It's about like watching people discover the old their old selves, and you know, I completely, like Greg James's one where he's like, God, I was really depressed about 10, 11 years ago, and this demonstrates to me that I was really a bit blue. And so it's a bit like a in the you know, in the psychiatrist chair a little bit as well. But also what I'm excited about is the fact that it's quite new, and I've not cracked it yet. You know, I'm sure it'll develop as time goes on, I think, because you know, ultimately you could sit for 10 hours with somebody with all their ideas, so you've got to try and get that down to about half an hour. So I've got to work on my techniques.
And one of the things we're seeing so many podcasters start to sort of go back to now with you know, come out of the lockdown and stuff is live shows. Is that something you'd ever consider doing?
Look, I can't wait. I really want to do that, and we're looking into it now, because I mean, obviously I was talking to, funnily enough, Clive about this the other day. We're similar psychologically, I think. We go from 0 to 60. So we have, like, when the radio show went, I panicked and was like, I've got a mortgage to pay. I need to work. And and then I ended up spinning all these plates, thinking, well, most of them will fall.
Was that just knee jerk though?
It was like, what do you do? What is the point of you if you're not on the radio? You've got to work. You've got to do something. Podcasts. I was like, and I ended up. So I've got, you know, there's 2 or 3 different things spinning at the minute, but there's a lot of potential for all of them to be live. And in fact, one of the things that we're talking about at the minute, one of the most immediate things, is doing this podcast, the CuldeSac. Or, well, actually, we're not sure yet, because we do a live show on the Patreon as well, like a live radio show. So we're hoping to do either that or the CuldeSac, or maybe the lineup. You know, we're definitely going to do some live shows and some live podcasts this year, because it seems to be, people have told me that they're wild, you know, because the podcast world is so, once you subscribe and once you're in it, it's a real familial thing, isn't it? People get very passionate about it.
Absolutely.
And so I'm looking forward to that, seeing the whites of people's eyes and mixing with them at the bar later, you know.
And I think, you know, a lot of these people have missed your voice on radio. So let's talk about that a little bit. Tell us about the radio station.
Yeah, well, that's a Ben idea, right? Because just before Christmas, we set up the Patreon, ostensibly with a view to that just feeding the podcast, really, the CuldeSac podcast. And I thought, well, I'll post up, and I do, you know, sometimes I just, like last night, I just found a bit of stand-up that I did in 2013, and I just sort of read it out and posted it, you know, and people thought, oh, that's quite funny. And that's what I thought the purpose of it was. And then Ben, being a 20-something genius, you know, he said to me, you know, that you can do like you can sort of do your own little radio shows, like guerrilla radio shows. We've got the technology to do it. And I was like, no. Yeah. And so just before Christmas, we posted it out on Twitter and to the Patreons. We said, if you're free between 3 and 5, 3 days before Christmas, we'll do a little Christmas special. And it went mad, you know, like, I mean, you know, the numbers aren't the same. It's not like you've been on Radio 2. You're talking about maybe 1,000 or 2,000 people, but those people are just so into it. Yeah. It's really addictive. And so now we do it every Friday, 1 till 3 p.m. We do a radio show. And it's so beautiful for me, because I curate all the music and I really take my time over it. But it's mostly, and I write material, and you know, but we have the Discord going, and we've got people getting in contact. It's really live and exciting. It's a thrill. I can't say anything else.
And I mean, Patreon for me, it's so DIY, and it's so a direct channel to those that are passionate about, you know, what the creator does. And I think it's an amazing thing. And, you know, we're seeing so many podcasters kind of having that attached to their podcast now, that, you know, you can get this over here, and essentially most podcasts are free. So, you know, if you can put stuff on Patreon and it helps sort of cover the cost of production and things like that, then it's great. So I want a little snapshot behind the curtain of the radio show. So where do you do it? Is it like, and like how is it put together?
It's ridiculously exciting. We did the first 3 in the top room.
Right. I hope she's going to say that.
We did the first three in the top room. In fact, the first one was we did a test before the Christmas one, a couple of days before it, and Ben's missus got COVID, right? So we had to set it up because everybody was really, if you remember, we were all paranoid about getting COVID the day before Christmas. So Ben came in, set up the mixing desk, set up, we have to get a screen for the cart wall and this, that, and the other. He sets it all up while I'm out of the room, and then he disappears like the milk tray man, and he's in the car outside with the broadcast. He clicks onto it, and he's got right, okay, and it's like almost like CB radio. Okay, you're live now, and so you remember which faders to use for that. Don't touch that one, or else you'll go off air. And I just, the first one, I did it myself, because I had to, because of COVID. We had all the fucking windows open, and it was totally insane. But now we've got a bit more sophisticated, because although it was fun to do it in the house, and it's like, oh look, somebody's having a piss in Gladstone Park, I can see it from here. We lost a bit of control, so now we do it in Burning Bright's offices near Charlotte Street, and we've got a little corner set up, and it's a bit more pro now, and we've got some proper mics and everything. It's all a bit more controlled. Like this first time we did it from there, I think I accidentally backed my chair over the lead for the internet, and I cut it out for like 15 minutes. And you couldn't write it, so it completely like a sitcom, But we're every month, every week, we're getting a little bit more sophisticated, without being like too slick. We're not Gary Davis,
Yeah. Lovely stuff. So if people want to find out about the radio show, what's the Patreon address for that, Shaun?
Thanks for asking. It is patreon.com. He says, now panicking in case he's got it fucking wrong. I'm pretty sure that's right. Patreon.com / Shaun Keaveny. So that's ShaunKeaveny. No gap, because if you amazingly already, if you put patreon.com / Shaun Keaveny with a space between Shaun and Keaveny, some other Shaun Keaveny turns up, and I think I don't know what he does, like he like fishes for salmon in the Arctic or something. Don't click on his.
That sounds quite decent.
Unless you want salmon fishing, in which click on.
Yeah. I mean, choice is the listeners, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And obviously the creative Cul-de-Sac, people can get that wherever they get their podcasts, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's everywhere, like Omicron.